so far.
I'm wishing I was where you are, Ed. That's such a lovely background.
I It's Paradise Lost. It's kind of no longer available. It's
Is it an actual place that you
oh
know and
yeah,
love?
yeah, many happy memories. I can tell you about it sometime.
And is it just covered all over with buildings around its edges or something?
No, it's the way it is. It's everything you see. It was a private lake, uh,
Ah,
owned by an old German man up in Canada. It was on Ontario. Yeah, he carved this thing out of the rocky hillside by himself.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It was his life's passion. And he has this beautiful dock and
Oh,
float out there. Oh, many happy memories. Pair of loons. Yep. And
oh,
no motorboats. Nice clean water.
uh-huh.
Yep. Yep. But he died and his daughter said, I can't keep the place open. So unfortunately,
So
yeah,
it's there, but it's just private wild land then?
private wild land. Yep.
Oh,
Just
Mother
for the,
Nature is probably happy.
I know.
There's a lot of that in Canada.
Absolutely. I tell you more sometime.
We tended to vacation more with mountains than with lakes. Although they're like at Rocky Mountain National Park, there are always wonderful lakes to hike to. So,
True. Yeah. Ontario is flat as a board. It's
Oh, it's
interesting.
not that flat.
It's flat. Let me tell you, Ontario, just a few miles away in Quebec,
Northern Ontario isn't as flat.
Yeah, Tobermory is flat.
way up there.
mm,
Okay, having said that, my
I see.
antique clock tells me by ringing 7 chimes, it's time.
Okay.
So let us move forward. This is the March 7th Master Plan Steering Committee meeting.
Correct.
Let us move forward with our agenda.
Okay.
First and foremost, the approval of the February 15th meeting minutes, which Mr. Troop so kindly took and passed around. And
I move we approve Mr. Trump, sorry,
Miss-
Mr. Troop.
Please.
Mr. Crump?
No, Mr. Troop. I'm in a lot of meetings today.
apparently, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you. Excellent as all
Anybody you know?
those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we've gone through a number of other goals and we've gotten to the point of looking at climate change. Sharon had a number of comments and recommendations, certainly for the existing conditions. Has everybody seen her write up on things that she believes should be included?
Let's see. Bum, 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 bum.
While people are searching at that, one of the things that I'd
Yeah.
actually like to start with, because I think there are likely people who would be surprised with the list, is just to go over what Bolton has already done in terms of responding to the climate crisis, because I think that it lays the groundwork for saying that the soil is ripe already, um, for moving on to kind of more stringent proposals. So I don't know if people have actually seen that preamble thing, and if not, I can read really fast.
Now, why don't we,
I sent it on Monday.
Pam, do you have it?
I did, and I sent it to Pam yesterday.
I put it up in the drive. If you can't find it any other place, it's in the one pagers. I put it at the bottom.
Okay, let me,
It's in a Word document.
Just give me a minute and I'll pull it up.
Okay,
But I think what it says there, if you've had a chance to look at it, is that Bolton has since passing a town meeting proposal, essentially saying we will adopt, honor, and uphold the commitments and the goals enshrined in the Paris Climate Accord, that the town has actually moved forward on climate-ready activities, in some cases quite successfully, in many cases quite successfully, including getting designated as a solarized community. Right? Okay, so we're just looking there. I'll let you read. You don't need me to read to you.
Indeed.
hey Pam, could you increase that a little bit for elderly eyes? Excuse me, senior eyes. My wife just corrected me.
Hmm,
Okay, great, thank you.
there you go.
Okay, Sharon, if you can run through this quickly.
Yeah. So the Paris Climate Accords were signed in April of 2016, and shortly thereafter, at the town meeting on May 2nd, the town approved adopting the proposal and targets of the Paris Climate Accord, and did it in an enriched way. So I'll read it fast for you. We will adopt, honor, and uphold the commitments to the goals enshrined in the Paris Climate Accord. We will intensify efforts to meet each of our community's current climate goals, push for new action to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, and work together to create a 21st century clean energy environment. Okay, then right after that, actually just a couple months after that, we were designated as a solarized community. And with the help of volunteer committees, installed 460 kilowatts of solar panels. Tony Chigodnik and I were heading that committee. And then early in February 2017, we achieved green community status with the state. It was a multi-page criteria list, agreeing to accept the most current state stretch code. And for those who don't know that, which determines the state building code requirements as soon as it is promulgated. So the option is to wait for 3 years to accept the stretch codes once they are promulgated, but a green community can opt to start that as soon as the most current requirements are promulgated. So we did that. We've received at least one grant to reduce the carbon footprint of the elementary school, and I'm after Don Lowe to get I know we had a couple other grants as well as part of that. And then as a green community, that was part of it was to take positive steps to lower its carbon pollution. For example, agreeing to purchase energy efficient town vehicles. I mention that because I don't believe we have done that. Okay. And then in 2018, we were designated with Harvard as a heat smart community by the state. And this is again an action that was headed by Tony. And by October 2018, Bolton had contracts for 16 air source heat pumps and 10 ground source heat pumps. Harvard had 21 air source heat pumps and 8 ground sources. And then Heat Smart went on for a total of 65 systems, 34 in Bolton and 31 in Harvard. And more photovoltaic solar systems and heat pump systems and heat pump water heaters have been installed since, because the Heat Smart Alliance continues to exist, and Tony happens to be our representative to that, working really hard on it. And then, so we get now to 2021, when the state of Massachusetts set out really ambitious targets, calling for having emissions below 1990 levels by the end of the decade, and reaching net zero emissions, contributing no additional planet warming pollution to the atmosphere by 2050. The challenges include decarbonization of existing buildings, as well as rapidly adopting net zero building codes. And data show that for most buildings, net zero building adds no cost to construction, which I think is really kind of an amazing statement that I think is a surprise for most people. there are some really good data on that, including a wonderful 1 hour video with builders about this. And then in 2023, Tony is the big energizer, and I formed Energy Efficient Bolton as a community-based group to address climate action in the town. And then I have a quote below that from the Boston Globe, from the, oops, I can't spell possibly, from the Office of Climate Innovation, saying it's crucial for the public to get involved to raise their awareness about the amount of work investment required to tackle the climate crisis. And so that's part of what we're here. I think the reason why I wanted to lay this out is to say that the town is ready for and has already participated in climate action things. And so I don't think we need to be pussyfooting around what needs to be done. So I think we have a town that's ready. I think that there are people who like people other than Tony and me, who are aware of all the things that we've done so far and what kind of public commitments we have made. By becoming a green community, we made public commitments to make significant decisions in terms of trying to combat the climate issues. So I think that we're ready to go for it. And so what I did actually in looking at the proposals that Bob so nicely wrote up is to essentially change words from suggestion to require over and over again. So I think we're at a position where we're not only as a town are we ready for this, but that for the sake of our children, we must act on it. So there we go. So
Okay, so as I understand it, Sharon, your recommendation here, basically to Olivia, is to incorporate as much of this as possible in the narrative for the existing conditions?
yes.
Okay,
And then, yes, I think that's where it goes, so that we can say, all right, this is the basis. This is the base on which we're making these suggestions. And then now what we do is we look at the ones that you have put in here. Excuse me, cats. And then just kind of look at the suggestions that I made that essentially I think take these all the suggestions that are there, or the goals that are there, and just kind of gin them up a little. I think that's a reasonable way of putting it. So if we take a look at them, oh, Tony's joined us, so good.
Hey, Bob,
yes,
I had a comment and then a question. So the comment was, first of all, to thank Sharon for that write-up. I found it to be extremely helpful. I think it like does sort of paint, as you said, a picture of a town showing increasing concern about the issue and also like increasingly formal expressions of commitment to addressing it. So I thought that was really helpful. My question, and maybe we'll get into this when we look at some of the changed language, is I don't disagree that we may want to use stronger language than suggest. I would want to be thoughtful about whether we use a word like require versus urge or strongly urge. And here's my only reason for saying that. I do think that at the end of the day, when it comes to implementing specific things, there's always going to be that like factoring in of cost when you're considering like in detail what it's going to look like. So I wouldn't want to use a word like require that might not allow us to factor in cost when push comes to shove, but I think something like strongly urging might be appropriate. So I just wanted to, we could hash this out as we go through the specifics, but I just wanted to make that one point.
I think
Require implies enforcement. That's one issue you have.
Mhm.
And
To
I
get-
think it's,
Force it in
it's
some
a,
way.
Well,
It's a-
but we do that all the time. And, you know, when we're doing building permits, we have requirements.
right, but what,
And we don't
what-
say, gee whiz, you know, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But we have requirements, and I think we can. There are lots of towns in Massachusetts already, including 10 specific ones who have agreed to kind of leap into this. Whoops. I have somehow. Do you want me to don't make changes? Here we go. I'm back. So I think we can require. And
think-
what
I think
what we
if you
do
look at
know
the-
is that, I mean, is, as I mentioned before, that the evidence shows, and this is statewide evidence, that the cost of building does not go up meeting these requirements. Because it turns out that putting in extra insulation and switching out fossil fuel heating with more climate friendly
but
options right there.
but Sharon,
Yeah.
Sharon, Sharon, I don't think that what Brian is talking about is the way most of the rest of the plan is written. If
Mm-hmm.
you go back through all the other goals, you'll find it in the same way, that we've avoided words like requirement and stuff, largely because of what he's talking about with the money, but also just so that, I mean, it's a plan, it's not a, the place to put require, I would think, would be in the implementing documents that then get voted on by the town meeting.
Like
But
bylaws.
what we need to have is, we need to have the select board approve the master plan, the planning board approve the master plan, and I know the selectmen don't have to, but you know what I mean. And it would be really nice if a town meeting accepted the master plan as well. And it's gonna be more likely to do it if the wording is political, if you will, and that it is urging and trying hard and doing this, that, and the other, rather than you have to do this. I mean, think about the beautifully worded action that is in there having to do with protecting trees on a new development lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's weasel worded in a way, because what we really would want to say is, we don't want people to do it, but we can't. We know we can't say that, and I think the same thing applies to a number of these things.
We have
Well,
to
I
deal
think
with
we've
other.
got
As good as
Okay,
they
excuse
are.
me.
Sharon, I think, to Ken's point, not only is it the town meeting, but there are a number of boards that are responsible for this. And I think urging the board to take action with some specific recommendations is the way to go about it, rather than subsuming their authority in our authority, which really isn't there at all. I mean, we report to the planning board, but in many respects, we're providing an overall perspective of things that probably we feel pretty strongly ought to be done. And we're not going to require them. We're going to urge them to do it and work with them to provide it, to do it in a way that is appropriate. And to Brian's point, makes sense in terms of not only climate, but in terms of the economic and fiscal realities of the town. And to your point, if we go in and show clearly that implementing these approaches in terms of construction have no impact or minimal impact, then I wouldn't be at all surprised if the relevant authorities are going to say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let's require it. So I think rather than imposing it without appropriate authority, and we don't have any authority really, recommending it and justifying the recommendation is the way to go about it.
How about strongly urge?
That's fine.
That's fine,
I-
absolutely fine.
Right? It could be, I mean, I think that that would be good, you know, strongly urge from a committee like this that's been thinking about these topics. Gives permission to activists like me and Tony and others to go into planning board meetings and talk to them about, you
Yep.
know, why we can do this. And the fact that in other towns have discovered that indeed the building costs are not greater. So that some of the you know, pushback that has happened earlier just, you know, is only it, well, it's not something that cannot be urged out of the way.
Okay, and I think that's a very good way to go. I mean, if somebody came in and, you know, as a member of the planning board, told me what I had to do, you know, there would be a certain visceral reaction to that. But if somebody came in and said, well, I think you ought to do this, and these are the 5 really good reasons you ought to do it in a well-balanced approach, I personally would be much more willing to listen and probably and vote to take action.
I think one of
Good.
the interesting things, I've listened in on a couple planning board meetings and thought, my God, these people have come out of their everyday jobs and learned a whole new vocabulary and have to go through checklists. And they go through checklists, and where in heaven's name are we going to get them to think about something, you know, more broadly than the checklists that they've been given? But I think that it is possible to have conversations and start having townwide conversations about that. But I think I think we could, for example, in this 911 that's in front of us right now, suggesting that we hire a climate action professional is a suggestion, right? I mean, something like that could stay. But, and then I'm going down to 913. Can I just scroll down with this, or does somebody have to move
No,
it?
Pam has to do that.
Okay. Right. I think let's look at 913, because I think that the prioritize improvements that decrease fossil fuel use to state goals would be, I mean, that's an urge, that's not a requirement.
And that, I think, reads fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, integrate climate goals and hazard mitigation within all departments.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So scrolling down, Pam. And whoops. So work towards achieving. That's a goal.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yep.
killer. So I think moving on. Okay. Whoops, implement guidelines. So here we go. Implement guidelines for new development.
Well, and rather than
something like
requiring-
aiming for,
No,
something like
aligned with state and your, right?
aligned with.
Aligned with.
Do you know if the town is looking to adopt the specialized stretch code in the future? Because I know now it's just the new stretch code, but there is that additional tier that some neighboring communities have
Yes,
adopted.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to make that point. And looking at this whole document, it looks to me like this is more focused on tolerating climate change rather than preventing it. There are a few exceptions that we see here, but I think one of the key things that we need to do is, and it requires a town meeting. It requires that there be a vote in the town meeting is to go for the opt-in as specialized energy code, which goes beyond the stretch code that we're currently, following.
Mhm.
And buildings, home heating and cooling in New England energy use, residential buildings are about 30% of the total. And of that, heating and cooling is 61%, hot water 17%. So it's really a significant amount of energy. It's right up there with transportation. It's more than industrial and about the same as commercial. So I think we need to focus a little bit more on buildings rather than land use and things like that, which fine, those are all fine. But I think that we need to be a little more specific, I think, particularly on the specialized code. Thank you for bringing that up, Olivia.
Sure. Yeah,
Can I add to what Tony just said? Sorry. Hi, guys. I'm sorry I was late, but right along the lines of what Tony said, as I was listening to Sharon talk, because I know sometimes the language in the bylaws that involve building is more things like encourage or incentivize, and you're trying to give a builder a reason to use green resources, so that, as we look toward future bylaw development or enhancement, I think, that would be a very appropriate place to add, hey, if you're going to get your density bonus if you hit these 3 or 4 or 5 green initiatives that are, or energy efficiencies within the buildings that you're making. That's just one example to the group to kind of illustrate what part of what Tony was saying.
In fact, the
And I
rest of
don't
the
know that
state, the rest of the state is really moving on in this. I don't know if any of
Yeah.
you follow there's a listserv. It's called, I'm sorry, I don't have the Zero Carbon Mass. And the specialized code is only for new construction, so it doesn't affect retrofits. And there's all kinds of information on how to get that passed. And in fact, there are 32 communities already who have passed the specialized code. And to do that, they had to go through a town meeting vote. Or the ones
So
that
it
are
should be,
cities had to go through city council, so.
so it's a specialized, Pam, it's a specialized stretch? Yeah,
Yeah.
super.
That's the highest
Specialized.
one that's available, right?
yeah, it's technically the specialized energy code. So that's higher level than the stretch energy code.
And it's also
yeah.
called opt-in because it's required to be opted in by each town.
Mhm.
But what's the official name?
It's the specialized energy code.
Yeah.
Then they have the Mass Commonwealth
Is
regulations.
it Specialized Energy Building Code?
It is the Mass Building Energy Code, specialized level. But they just reference it as the specialized opt-in.
Yeah, I think the actual name is opt-in Mass Specialized Energy Code.
Okay.
And not the
Opt-
stretch code. People always confuse it with the stretch code. It's beyond the stretch code, but
Yeah.
it applies only for new construction.
So it's
Okay, well,
opt-in.
whatever it is, let's make sure that we get the official name,
Yes.
so it's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
appropriately
I'll
recognized.
look it up and fill in the formal title.
Okay, and I, contrary to what I've said before, rather than investigate, which is a very passive approach, recommend.
Recommend is good, yeah.
Mm.
I
Yes,
put
yeah.
together a package of stuff that I sent out last week, but I don't know if everybody got it. I know I sent it to Pamela, but I can send that out again. And that gives references that help you to understand this, and contacts where you can reach out and get help from other towns that have already done this. For example, Stowe has done it.
You could say pursue, like we did with the CPA.
Yeah.
I like that better.
Yeah, put in pursue.
Yeah.
Okay, moving down, are we finished with that?
I think so. Here we go. Yeah, I didn't make any change to the wetlands and that kind of stuff. Not my area. So.
But I think, you know,
I think they wanted to
Yeah.
be more general there.
Yeah, after speaking with Rebecca, the town conservation agent, she had some advice on how we could better angle these goals to be less location specific, which I think is important for this goal.
when are you gonna be able to get those? Olivia,
Sorry?
are you gonna be able to revise this to reflect her input, or it does not
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, so I put some of my notes in here. I don't know if they're showing, it says anonymous. Those weren't mine necessarily, but I think maybe Pam covered some of it too.
While we're
But-
talking about that, can we go back, just look at 925 and could we put a word in front of pursue, like actively? Pursue. I'm thinking the older I get, the more I can pursue at a slow pace. But actively pursue is adding just a bit of urgency while still not ordering, right?
Yeah, but I think, you know, hopefully that is gonna be reflected in the implementation matrix, the priority.
Mm,
And who's responsible
agree.
for it?
uh-huh,
So I wouldn't overdo it here,
okay.
right? Get the
Okay.
subject here and the verb and the adverbs
Right.
into the implementation matrix appropriately.
Okay.
For 931,
Uh-huh.
you could leave in for the Still River floodplain.
Yeah,
That's-
but that's really maintained by DCR. You gotta be careful here about jurisdictions.
I
Oh,
think,
okay.
That's a
isn't-
state land. And as much as we want, I don't think we, as a town, belong in there.
Okay.
As much as you want. I'm just telling you that I've checked it out and
Mm,
it's DCR land. So, you know, it's difficult for us to do something in there without their approval. They've got their own plans.
Well, we can't conduct it. We sure can urge it because it's
We
a
can urge it.
very significant piece of real estate.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
So how about urge, suggest, whatever, wetland restoration?
Urge. I like urge.
Okay, so
Work with
acknowledging
state-
ownership.
Urge wetland, just leave it in there and put urge,
Okay.
and even say urge the state, urge the state or urge wetland, somewhere in there indicating that it's a state responsibility.
Right.
Um,
I just keep thinking
about-
about the old theory of the common wheel, that
yeah,
it's sitting right smack in the middle of our town. We really need
No doubt
at
about it.
least some input.
how about urge state wetland restoration
Work with state authorities,
or
work with state agencies,
Collaborate with state.
conduct.
well, do we have anything to say about it
Sure.
besides urging?
In collaboration with, yes.
Yeah.
Ah,
Excellent,
yeah.
Yep. That's good.
excellent.
There we go. Yep. Yeah, that's a good thing because that says, okay, it is the state responsibility, but they don't do things willy-nilly. They do it when local people stand up and talk to them about it.
Okay, so we're gonna
Really
put the Still River floodplain and
Back
Route
in.
110 back in, right?
Right.
Well, are you sure?
Yeah,
Do you
long as we
want, do
say-
you want a global? Don't you want possibly global wetland restorations in the town? Working with the Conservation Commission? 9.3 strikes me as kind of walking on the Conservation Commission here and possibly conflicting with it. I'd just be careful about this.
Well,
I mean, they have a
the
very
master
strong
plan.
mandate. They have the CMR 310, which defines things very well.
But isn't it not our position as master plan to talk in more general terms and obviously have an impact on other aspects of the town? Doesn't mean we're taking over them.
Could we keep it general and say including the Still River floodplain?
Right,
Sure,
that's why it got taken out, was to make it more general.
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
The
I'm just-
problem might be the word restoration, because in the Still River floodplain, they do refer to restoration. But there's other places in town where it's not restoring it, but it's protecting wetlands that sometimes rubs up against people the wrong way. You know, where
But
a wetland was not originally there, but it's tending that way now. You know, like behind Martha Remington's house, where there's more and more and more wetland that wasn't there. I mean, she's got farm equipment out in the middle of the wetland because it used to be a meadow. So maybe the problem might be that the Still River floodplain really is restoration.
But what do you want to restore? What do you want to restore? You've got the Tenneco gas line going through it. Again, you've got, state wildlife agencies in charge of hunting and permissions and so on. Who's going to go in and fix what? That's my question.
Well,
got
the wetland
The Hmong farmers, right? They've got their planting and so on,
species,
which they're allowed to do. It just
But-
seems so vague to me.
no,
I mean, it's a wetland. It is a wetland. So what more do you want from it? It's so wet now, you can pretty much canoe it. It's wet all the time. I'm just trying to understand what the goal is. I thought that when we had kind of conduct wetland restoration generically, that made sense. Again, collaborating with state agencies, and collaborating with our own Conservation Commission. We just seem to be
Okay,
walking
so-
on top of their bailiwick.
Ed, let's
Just-
address both of them simultaneously. Why
Okay.
don't we conduct wetland restoration, including, so that people understand that we would like to do it for even what is owned by state agencies. So conduct wetland restoration, including the Still River floodplain, in collaboration with state agencies.
Okay.
Thank you.
That goal was also mentioned specifically for Still River floodplain at those locations in the Apple Country Natural Climate Solutions report.
Certainly
that
was.
is referenced in a more specific way elsewhere. So if we feel like we don't
Perfect.
to go there, then we can always leave it more general.
Okay. So we'd like to do it for everything that we're directly responsible for, but in the case that we aren't, we'll cooperate with the people who are.
Perfect.
Hey, one, stepping back for a minute and in defense of the planning board, there are people who say that it's not really a planning board, it's a permitting board. And I think our town planner will take exception to that, as we are now looking much more seriously at planning in terms of environment and in terms of global climate changes, housing, et cetera. So I think in the next year, you will see some recommendations that will significantly change the approach that the town has towards planning and permitting.
I found the
Yeah.
same thing on the Conservation Commission. It was
Right.
basically, permitting wetland building 99% of the time. It was very difficult to truly deal with, conservation efforts. I would hope it's changed if possible, but, development ruled supreme in terms of meeting times and so on.
So I think that's true. And however, you can't ignore the fact that the various boards are responsible for implementing and providing oversight on the implementation of the regulations. So
Yes.
you got to do that too.
Yep.
But kudos to all those people who spend an awful lot of time making it happen.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, moving on.
Moving
I think-
down, I have no more, whoops, begging your pardon. That's my hip jiggling.
Olivia, did you have other input from Rebecca?
So all of my notes are included in here. I added them on Tuesday. So if you scroll up, you can see some of my comments, but for the most part, she didn't really have a lot of feedback on the goals from here.
Okay, so are we in a position right now so that we can summarize these things and update and finalize our one pager for climate change?
No, because there are sections down below this. Moving on.
Okay.
Yeah, there are more with comments. All right, here we go. Here's it. Right. So I put in forbid clear cutting of new development sites and disallow lawn watering systems in new developments. This is, I mean, okay, so you have to figure out how to word that that's less definitive than my wording, but that is, both of those things I think are really important. The clear cutting new development sites, I mean, what we saw and what if, oh my God, I can't even think of the name of that development. Where we've
Karen,
had-
don't you want to have a prefix of encourage bylaws which forbid clear
Yes,
cutting, encourage
yeah.
bylaws which disallow? We're
Right,
not a
yep.
bylaw here. That's
Right.
Right.
I think that's a great, yes, thank you.
Yep.
And so indeed that, so in a preface for the forbid clear cutting, encourage bylaws that would forbid
Mhm.
clear cutting, and encourage bylaws that would disallow lawn watering systems.
Right.
In new developments. Yeah.
So we
Oh,
want to
that's
encourage
sure.
rainwater recovery.
Oh, there we go.
I think this could all be under the umbrella
Yeah.
of a larger goal that works to develop a bylaw for new development centered around, you know,
Because if somebody watered their lawn from recovered rainwater, that would be okay, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at
So a
this point,
bylaw could be crafted to list those types of exceptions that Tony points out.
Yeah.
Rather than
So
us
how-
getting too many details here.
So how could we reword this? So what's the preface that was suggested here for both of these things?
Encourage bylaws.
Encourage bylaws that would.
That would.
minimize
forbid-
clear cutting of development sites.
Those two words.
Don't we
Not-
have
not-
that
no,
under,
not-
don't we
not
have that under
minimize.
land use already?
Yeah, I think we do.
yeah,
Yeah.
there is
Okay.
some about clear
Is it-
cutting, but I think, yeah, Sharon and
I'm
I
not
don't-
sure you can minimize clear cutting. That's like saying nicely kill somebody. You know, it's like, what's minimize clear cutting? Clear cutting is bad. Right? So we don't want them to do it at all. That doesn't mean
Well-
they can't cut out some trees, but you can't minimize clear cutting.
It would be a fun bylaw to write, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's a good
Well, that's
intention.
okay. Yeah.
A good
but-
intention.
So, so can we combine these two with what did we say? Develop bylaws that would. Is that it?
I don't think it's a good idea to use the term clear cutting.
Why not? It's a thing.
How define clear cutting then?
Yeah.
Take out all the trees.
How big?
Okay, yeah,
So we're in the weeds, right? That's the bylaw. We just need to incentivize a bylaw that encourages. the
reduces
production
the
Right,
cutting of
reduces.
indigenous trees, period.
Yes.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
good.
But reduce it?
Well,
How many
or
do you
stronger.
have to save? You know,
That's a detail of the bylaw.
That's a,
Right, that's
yeah,
right.
That's a tough one. Very tough one.
Need
And
to
there's
keep
a lot
someone
of-
there to
there's a-
take out the CO2.
But there's a lot of information, and to Tony's point, I've got lots of information, which I've shared with Rebecca and others about the amount of carbon sequestration that goes on in deciduous trees of certain sizes. And that's a real nice guideline for reducing the cutting of particularly deciduous trees. So without getting into the
Ah.
weeds, we want to reduce it, right?
Yeah. Well, let's put some, let's not just have that be a lovely thing that you do. Let's put it here in the recommendations.
We,
So I don't
we have
wanna-
a
I
whole
don't wanna leap
section
over
on
the-
it in chapter
We have a
4.
whole section on it
There it
already.
is.
Okay,
There it is.
all right.
There
When,
it is.
and the lawn watering, there we go.
It's all set.
Okay, so let's take that out.
It is. Okay, back, whoop, where are we? Climate, dingy ding dong, 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 dong.
Okay, can we
Oh.
take out the forbid clear cutting of trees?
Yes, please.
That's, I mean.
Yeah.
That's gonna,
Cause it's already someplace else.
yeah, but it's already someplace else in the appropriate context of the significance of those trees to shading and to the carbon sequestration. right?
Got better still. Yep, better than just saying it. Okay,
Right.
what about lawn watering systems in new developments?
Well, and now just a minute,
Right.
now,
Mhm.
that's very important as well,
That's
and
in
there are a
water and
couple of
sewer.
provisos, one of which Tony has appropriately cited, and that is if
Okay.
we have rainwater recovery, that's really
Okay.
great. And what do you mean by lawn watering systems? What about shrubs? Do they come under this?
Right.
That-
So I think
No, I don't think,
reduction in.
lawn
in-
is not shrubbery, it's,
Well,
you saying? okay. But you understand what I'm after here, so.
okay, so can we make it,
So-
can we get rid of the disallow? And let's talk about what we want to do. We want to reduce the amount of water that is used in residential areas for watering plants, right? Whether those are lawns or shrubs or anything else. We'd
Can we
like to
say
reduce.
drinking or well water?
I'm sorry?
Can we add drinking or well water, which helps clarify what we're against? We're against drawing from the aquifer.
Yep.
Okay, to water lawns.
Right.
We are encouraging alternative water sources like cisterns and rain, rain cisterns as a way to do it.
So what we would like to really do is minimize groundwater extraction for the purpose of watering lawns and shrubs, right?
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct.
Ah,
Correct.
Now,
okay.
that's got to be couched in the context of residential, because we got a bunch of farmers that are going to be real
Right.
pissed about that.
Yeah. you bet.
Right.
Right, right. So, so we're talking here about residential,
Right.
okay? And you want to be, whoops, excuse me, just one slightly.
But just minimize watering
Steve,
systems.
I'm on a meeting.
I think
Okay.
it's sort of
I'm
addressed under
on a-
water and sewer, under action.
Yeah, we
8.0.
did that as well.
So I don't know if we wanted to keep it in
Another
one
duplicate?
place or.
Well, the last time we talked about keeping CPA in one place, everybody said, oh, let's spread it out, so. Or phosphid for that matter, so.
Right.
I don't think
Okay.
it hurts to,
I
if you
think
come
it's-
up with good wording, I don't think it hurts to put it in here.
You should leave it here because you're talking about water, on-site filtration and stormwater. Stormwater management
Yeah,
means we do
yeah, and I
want,
like the bit around the using of groundwater and that, and the way
Yeah.
that Bob worded it, I think that's really good.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
you want to disallow or discourage? Are we going to discourage? I mean,
minimize.
Sure.
how can we regulate something if we say minimize? Is this
Well,
just
how can you regulate anything on anybody's private land?
That's our dilemma.
yeah,
That's a huge dilemma.
so discourage,
I think discourage is a great word. But
yeah,
Sharon, I agree with your sentiment, but the number of towns that I walk through when there's a real water emergency and see signs all over this place with sprinklers all over saying privately supplied water,
Okay,
right?
Even though it is from a public aquifer.
Exactly.
That's
But
right,
that-
yeah.
you know, but Tony, you're getting into the philosophical approach
Right.
to the common wheel, so we're not going to deal with that right now.
I mean, what you really want to do is you want something that gives the planning board and the permitting person to make the developer not put in these lawn watering systems automatically. I mean, if somebody is hell bent on putting it on after the fact, they will. But what you
Right.
really want is you want nobody to put it in just by right. You want discussion about it. And, you know, whether it is attached to their well or if they could set up a, you know, a rain cistern type system. I mean, this is just language to encourage people consider how to get, you know, deal with this. And I mean, I think we need to discourage it partly because once it's in one neighborhood, somebody else wants it in their neighborhood and everybody wants it on the street. They want all their lawns green, you know, to keep up with each other. So it's more important to give the planning board teeth to talk about it with new developments and say, please leave this out, you know, just don't put in. system.
Okay, so I agree, and I think it's up to the planning board in a very frankly complicated legal and statutory environment to come up with a way of doing that. So why not urge reduction in lawn watering systems and new developments and leave it at that?
What about
Sounds good.
reductions of actual lawns?
Well, I mean, that's all part of it, right?
Yeah, well,
Yes.
But we can, I mean, this is to some degree,
9.4.
going for the best. And so let's not get wishy-washy about it. We've come up with some really good ideas here. And so we can make suggestions here in our suggestions about
that's what they need to be.
watering.
Hold
Yeah.
it.
That's
Thank
what
you,
they need to
Pam.
be.
Okay, we've already dealt with this.
Discourage, right? Okay,
Good.
aquifer, there you go. Yep,
Perfect. That's it.
Okay,
That's it.
that's it.
lovely.
Done deal.
Oh, I really like it when somebody comes
stated,
up with
too.
with a
Very well
better,
stated.
shorter version of an
nice.
idea. Okay. And then 943, create a bylaw that encourages, rewards, and requires the planting of native species.
I mean,
Yeah.
you might put that in with 9.4.1 because they're both together. You don't need the lawn watering systems, especially if you plant native species.
Well,
Okay.
yeah,
They're still gonna do
that's
it.
true.
They're still gonna do it, folks. I guarantee it.
Right, but we can, you know, I also believe as much as we say they're going to be bad, yeah, that that people are going to become more and more aware of the issues, and if there is a culture in the town and a way of actually influencing the builders, because it's the builders who set the scene for this, right?
Yeah, but people watered their lawn when they came here from South Carolina or something.
Yep.
And they're gonna still want the same thing.
They will, and you know what?
So we're
Life
gonna
is going to get
encourage.
bad. Yeah. Well, so we're going to encourage, and we're going to say you're going into now a clean green town.
Well,
And
they don't know
and
that. They
we
bought
can-
the big house with all their money. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
getting back to the specifics of this series of
Right.
actions,
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
okay. So a bylaw that encourages the planting of native species, actually, when it comes to subdivisions, we can specify that, and we do.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
um,
larger islands with tree plantings, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Can,
Yep.
can I offer something here? Just because I've watched it play out in other bylaws or in
Please.
other towns. There a lot of all this. This is a list of multiple climate friendly measures that we would like to see implemented in a bylaw or two. So would it behoove us to focus the effort to something like encouraging new development to include climate friendly measures by offering incentives to the developers that include, and then having this whole list in one action, so that it's, you've got, so that it kind of brings it all together instead of because I'm looking at this, and when we go to the implementation matrix, it's just, they're all going to have the same exact thing across them. I don't want to minimize what's happening here in each individual one. So if you don't think you're more intimately attached, involved in it, Sharon, and I don't want to overstep, but I know that this is how it's being done in other towns, is they're saying, okay, developers, if you want to, build, a denser grouping of houses, show us the 5 climate friendly measures that you're going to implement in order to do so. Are you going to utilize some kind of a unique storage of water system and do the watering that way? Are you going to do, certain native tree plantings? I don't know, whatever the list is, but that would bring it all together. I don't know.
I like that
I like that.
because you want them to be aware of, 5 or 10 things, and maybe their site, it doesn't apply, 4 of them don't apply. So they'll
Right,
be
it gives more
out
flexibility.
to the planning board, oh, but we can do this, this, and this, hoping to create a good impression. So I like that.
I do too. And I think if somewhere we put in, and I don't think we can do it here, but put in a structure here saying that these are goals, not just for builders. These are goals for people living in this town in a time of climate crisis, when things have to be done. And we've got a bunch of good ideas of what you might be able to do. Right.
So going
There
back
are
to
grasses that don't.
That would be in the narrative, I think, right, Olivia?
Yeah.
That kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Sasha, going back to your comment, which I thought was very good. I think it would be appropriate then to have an overarching recommendation, as you've said, to encourage developers, and maybe we can go a little bit beyond that, to implement environmental and climate change sensitive approaches, such as, and list
Boom, boom,
off a
boom,
few of
right.
them.
Yeah. And
The
it's
one thing I'm a
also,
little nervous
yeah.
about is horse trading.
Is what?
Horse trading.
Horse trading.
Like,
That,
what are we
hey,
giving them for it?
if you guys get environmental, we're going to give you a bunch of neat things. Well, no, actually, in this town, we kind of require that.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's where it needs to go into we can't do it here, but it needs to be really carefully considered in both in wording and in placement in a bylaw.
Well, and that's why, and you've seen it already, I've pushed very, very hard to get Randall Arendt down here to talk about inverting the process of development.
Mhm.
So we start from environment and then work towards
Buildings.
Well, I would go even
accommodation
further.
that
You
developers
add
certainly want.
environment as well as benefit to the town, right? So they're coming in,
Yep.
there's a development happening in the town. So you're looking at things like, development that meets things beyond the current stretch code. And then you're looking at what other amenities are you giving to the town, like sidewalks or trails or something, what are you doing for storm water runoff, et cetera. So the bylaw might include those things too. Because we're talking about resilient landscapes in a climate or a climate crisis kind of context,
Mhm.
I offered it the way I did, but I think to your point, Bob, it could go into a lot of other places, but maybe with different wording.
Well, and again, to me, the trade-off is if you do it right and you do an inverted process of looking at the land and what the land can handle and look at the environment and look at the climatic elements of this whole discussion and will let you, and within reason, do things like more highly concentrated residences, multifamily residences, but there are going to be some control of that.
Parameters.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So
There are
getting
some
back to
sections,
this,
yeah, there are sections below this, I believe. On which,
let's run down those and then let's step back for a minute
And
and
take-
talk
yeah.
about an omnibus approach.
okay, okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I crossed out those things. I think that we're still in things that other people talked about. So if we want to keep looking at this.
That was a
Um,
recommendation from Rebecca, just because she thought it was redundant. We could just say native species and
Yep.
biodiversity.
Well, but again, native species that are more resilient, because species that are native to us now are not going to be in 10 or 15 years.
And that was the point that she made.
Okay.
Plant things that are normally planted 500 miles south of us.
Right, yes. So I think we have to say something like that to be more
Just take
clear.
out the word native and just say to species that are more resilient.
Well, but I think you got to be
Well,
careful.
Yeah, because we don't want nice Japanese ones.
Yeah, I mean,
Or some.
I love Japanese knotweed, but and let me tell you, it is resilient.
Don't plant any willow trees near drainage systems.
Right. They tried that in Florida. It's great stuff. Okay.
So what are we saying here?
I think it's fine as is.
Okay. 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 Then here we go. Here are some of my notes here. So incorporate long-term sustainability, climate resilience, carbon mitigation practices within the zoning bylaws using state net zero guidelines. That's
you-
the difference.
I
That's
think
the
we need to
difference.
be a little more specific there.
Okay. Suggestions, Tony?
I don't have any right now. I'm just saying that's pretty broad, state net zero guidelines.
The state net zero guidelines are actually pretty specific at this point. So, how, and we can look at that or just say, maybe just say net zero guidelines because there are not necessarily state ones using net zero guidelines. So they're kind of universal. We know that there are towns, there are multiple towns that are already doing this. So I think the 10 towns that got permission to go to zero right off the bat. And so they're incorporating these. Yeah, I think it just goes using net zero guidelines is good. And then and then on 954, I got more specific rather than saying climate resilience, saying state requirements regarding carbon neutrality.
But I think I
Yeah.
don't think that's a good idea. I think
I
that
think the
you're
other
getting too
is broader
specific.
and better.
I think climate resilience is broad and addresses a bunch of other things beyond
Yeah, I
carbon
agree.
neutrality.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. So saying climate included regarding climate
I think
resilience.
climate resilience is just fine.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
more general and it's
Include climate
Sorry.
resilience.
more
Yeah.
understandable to the general public.
Ah, okay.
But it
It's a
it
stated
encompasses
goal.
many more things.
Yes,
and just-
yeah, that's right.
And,
That's better.
and Tony, don't be offended when I say just carbon neutrality. That's very important.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I think climate resilience is a stated goal. That's really good. Yep.
You skipped over 9.5.3. Is that kind of weird?
Yeah, where's
Oh.
5.2? You got a
Yeah.
numbering issue there.
Did you mean the goal
Oh,
itself?
yeah, she'll fix that up, but
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Yeah, that's not mine, so I don't know what that is.
what is 9.5.3? I mean, what, it says a statement in what bylaw? Or is it a bylaw on its own?
So
just-
the town's purpose of the floodplain district doesn't incorporate anything regarding like climate change or how that might impact the floodplain district. So I thought it may be helpful in the future to include
It
more of
just
it.
seems like we're back walking on the
makes sense.
Concom again,
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
okay.
I mean, we haven't put the purpose of everything else in, I mean, we have a lot of purposes of everything we're talking about. So
Yeah.
it's like, why all of a sudden are we explaining the purpose of one little thing?
I know.
It just seems like a weird sentence, especially in abbreviated goal
I-
list.
I agree.
I would just take the,
Should we
out.
mention the Mass 2050 decarbonization roadmap here somewhere?
Ah, that's, yeah, Tony. Where would it go?
I don't know.
I
I'm living with this
hadn't
document
thought of,
here, guys.
yeah, you're right. That may be over. Let me go back and look at that and
Is that
I
no-
don't know
least
enough
in
about
fact-
it to even
Yeah,
comment.
agreed. Is that, we're gonna use the word pursue perhaps?
Yeah.
Pursue the state's blah, 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 blah. We felt
Yeah.
strongly about it.
It's a lot of policy recommendations, but we can mention.
are we
Something
talking
that
about
aligns with it.
955 here?
So you might want to go more general with it. So it's a part of, so the clean energy and climate plan has the decarbonization roadmap as a part of it. Is that correct? Like the Massachusetts Clean Energy and Climate Plan for 2025 and 20. I printed it out because I haven't read it yet. So I don't know what I don't know. So let me know if I'm not, if this is out in left field, but I'm looking at it says that it's informed by the decarbonization roadmap with strategies and policies and actions. So could we just reference in general, and again, not because it's not important, but because we're trying to encompass this whole idea of Massachusetts clean energy and climate, like this seems like the document and maybe the law. I don't know if there's actually MGL in here, but things that are, we can reference back to give this more teeth versus just saying it's a nice idea,
Where are you suggesting it, Stacia? I'm not sure. We have a number.
In a bunch of these, you're saying using net zero guidelines or,
Right, okay.
if there's a question as to how it's going to align with something that is more than a idea and is if not law is, I don't, this is the plan, this is the climate plan from our state. So
Mhm.
like it seems to me that we might not want to go as specific as the decarbonization roadmap, only because it is within this bigger plan that the context might need to be considered of that. Does that make sense?
Well, if it's a law, we don't even need to mention it. We have to follow it. It's a state law.
Right. I don't
Okay?
think
If
it
it's a
is, but I-
plan, we can say we support it, we
or we're
pursue it,
like,
Sure.
we
yeah,
encourage it.
exactly. Like we were trying to align with it, or
Sure. Nice
So
word.
where here are we talking about this? One of these numbers?
Well, scroll
Or
back.
this paragraph?
I'm so sorry. Is it possible to scroll back upward a little bit? Thank you so much. Uh, so,
Pam,
looking at
Like
is Pam
952?
doing that? You want to,
where did
You want
952 go?
952?
I don't see a
952.
952.
Just add it?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that right. And that it might cover some of this. It says include climate resilience as a stated goal to be considered. So this is specific to 954 I'm looking at is
Right.
more specific to design review criteria, right? 951 is, sustainability and climate resilience. It's very, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know.
Well,
I'm
you
out of
talked
my-
about this, was it called the matrix, something like that, or I'm just trying to reference what you mentioned a few minutes ago. This
Yeah, no,
state
this
plan.
clean energy and climate plan.
Okay, there you go. So you could add 952 if you feel strongly
you,
about it.
are you referencing the 2025 and to 2030 plan?
I am only because
Okay.
that's where I'm seeing the decarbonization roadmap from 2050.
Yeah, so they released the roadmap in 2020, and I think the short-term clean energy climate plan is the plan to achieve some of these goals in like a shorter term. But for like overall, maybe it would be best to just reference the roadmap, since that's
Okay.
more of a long-term planning initiative.
Got it. Okay,
Okay.
so the opposite of what I'm saying, basically.
Um,
And this is where I don't know what I don't know. So that decarbonization roadmap goes all the way out to 2050 versus the clean energy and climate plan is only until 2030.
I
That-
believe so, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to reference both. They're both in the time span of this plan's life, so I think we
I
can
guess, yeah, and I don't want to stay in the weeds. There's a lot of referencing to net zero guidelines or to like this stuff. If we're going to give it teeth, it needs to come from like it's per the state or per this plan or something so that the people who are implementing these actions know what we're talking about.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a good point, and it's something that we can't do right now.
Right.
But I think we've got to identify specific state plans or MGLs or whatever that specifically state what the intention of the state is. In some cases, they are laws and we must follow them. In others, it's sensible guidelines that have been developed by a number of experts and adopted by a number of towns. We ought to be doing it as well. And so
And
we
that's
need
the-
references to those.
And that's the kind of stuff that would go in the one pager.
Right.
So that
Although-
people can look at it
yeah.
and say, hey, this is what that's all about.
You
But
know,
we don't
so-
want to get rid of these all these specifics.
No,
so
no,
I'm
no,
not so sure. So
But I think
Yeah,
we need to
I'm
be
kind of
aware of how
lost
we're
there, yes.
referencing
but
the guidance within them.
can we make an omnibus statement at the top of these that talks about what the state guidelines and roadmaps are? And in order to address them, we suggest the following things, bang, bang, bang.
I'm gonna sound like Brian here, but is this something that somebody could take as a homework assignment and
Well, that's what I'm
create
saying.
what is supposed to be there so that we can move on? Because
We
we spent
can't
an
do
hour
this.
and 15 minutes
Yeah.
now on this on this one item.
I can do that. And I think a statement at the beginning of the climate section and also within the framework itself, the document, referencing those plans and saying that the master plan is aligned with the state's Commonwealth's sustainable principles and roadmap for the future.
Olivia,
Okay.
do that and send it to Tony and me in draft form.
Well,
Which should be sent to everybody.
I have a-
Well,
to
just-
everybody.
let me
Is
step back
there-
as your chairman for a moment here. My objective is to get this stuff resolved down to something that is, first of all, reasonably implementable and either as, solid recommendations or something more in a reasonably short form that can be consolidated into a one pager. this is all very interesting and it's, I'm sure, interesting to us and it's very important. But until it gets out to the public in a one pager, it's kind of an academic discussion.
Right.
We can
Right.
have
So-
both things though, can't we? I mean,
No, we
I
can't,
be-
Sharon.
I can't be succinct, but succinct and inadequate.
No,
Um,
what we have to have is, we may have more detail here that will be included in the goals and individual recommendations in the master plan. But it has to be consistent with what we put out in reasonably summary form to the public so that they understand.
So we're not dumping these ideas. We're making a succinct summary.
Yes, we're summarizing them. But again, in the process of summarizing them, there are a number of things in here to a number of comments that have been made this evening, that there are ways that we can subsume some of them under references to, state law, guidelines, what have you, rather than breaking them out individually. You see what I mean?
I do. I don't think I like it.
Well, I'm
Because
sorry.
what you're suggesting is that we have looked at details, but we're not going to share those.
No, you're gonna put them in the
No.
implementation matrix.
Okay.
But
All
we
right.
shared in the
So
plan for the future. This is just in the publicity leading up to the.
Yeah, this is,
issuing
I
of the
mean,
plan.
Okay.
these are
So-
reasonably high level goals and actions, but when we get down to the nitty gritty, yes, in order for people to implement them, there must be specificity, and you can do that. But I'm concerned that if we overwhelm people with the detail that's necessary for individual implementation, we're not going to get their attention or understanding of the bigger
You're-
picture.
You're right. Absolutely right.
All
There
right.
are there more things at the bottom of this, or have we gone to the bottom of the list? I can't I don't have it memorized. Is there
I think
more?
That's it.
That's the
Okay.
bottom.
That's the bottom. Okay.
Okay, so can we step back and decide what the next steps are with respect to climate change? As I understand it, Olivia is going to take a look at this, identify the roadmap, guidelines, mass general laws that have been implemented, and under those will be specific actions suggested by this. We will put those into a revised version of this document. We will summarize that into a one pager at a fairly high level and then get that out the door. The question is, how do we review that and assure ourselves that it's had reasonable review and that we're all generally in agreement so it goes out the door? Now, I'm concerned about timetable at this point as much as anything else. Now, I'd like to see quality and specificity, but I'd like to see communication and I'd like to see a timely resolution of this whole thing. So
What's our specific goal here?
June 30th, this is finished.
But I mean, in terms of this document,
End of
Are
next
we-
week.
So I
Oh,
think
I'd say-
Ken.
I'd say the end of next week.
Yeah.
That shouldn't
Pardon
be
me.
that hard.
Hey, listen, we've had
Yeah,
months on this. We've
Right.
got to bring it to closure.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say it
Yeah.
would be very helpful to have any final comments in this document by next week if possible. That way I can take, this finalized draft and then implement or put that into the implementation matrix, and I can work with Pam to help develop the priority level and also responsibility, because you have to identify those in the matrix. And that takes some time. But aside from that, I have been updating the existing conditions and can add the climate considerations in there as well. Hopefully I can send that out to you guys next week. We've been synthesizing the strategic framework document for the master plan with the existing conditions and trying to figure out what's a succinct way to provide enough information within the document itself so that when people are reading it, they kind of get a sense of what's happening before they get to the goals. And then once that is complete, we can do the executive summary, which will be that shorter kind of 1 page with the goals, like 12 to 10 to 12 pages the most. So we have a couple things in the works that we're hoping to get to you guys soon, but it would be helpful to have the goals finalized. That way we can, you know.
I
Okay.
think with the
With that-
exception of the climate changes we just discussed, the goals are finalized. We're not going to be
Yeah.
reviewing chapters 1 through 8 any further. We've
Okay.
spent
Yep.
3 meetings on it now, so I think they're in good shape.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are. We're in great shape. So what exactly are we going to put up in the drive for commenting? You're going to take a crack at this and incorporate some of the comments between Olivia and Pam, and then the result of that will be put up on the drive, and then
So these
we
goals
can
will
make
all
our comments
go-
on that document.
Yeah, these will all go into the implementation matrix, which will have priority level, responsibility, additional notes, or any potential reference to funding sources that we might think are relevant. So I'll work on that. But that takes some time. So hopefully we can get that done relatively quickly. But
Okay,
as far as
so I'm sorry, Olivia. So you're going to incorporate as much of the thinking as you can of what we've discussed tonight, and you're going to put that up on the web for comments. Pam, you're going to put that out, notify everybody that it's up there and where it is. I think there's been some confusion about where things are. Not that you haven't done a pretty good job at communicating that, but there has been a little bit. And then people are going to comment on that, get their comments back. Now, if you can have it up running by, say, next Thursday, and then we start on Friday, and the following week, it's done. That's it. That all comments are enclosed, and we close comments. We get a final result out of those. That will give us the ability to put together a 1-pager. So 2 weeks from tomorrow, we will have what we need for a 1-pager. We can get that out to communicate to the public. That'll be at least the last scheduled 1-pager that we've put into the Independent. And Kristen's on here. Kristen has put a bunch of stuff up on Facebook and put links in to the
No.
3 that we've already issued, so that people can take a look at that. And then as soon as this gets up, we'll make sure that, first of all, the Independent gets it,
That's true.
and then everything else will go into Facebook and be directed to the town website, as Kristen did today with the other stuff. Sound good?
Yes, that's good.
Excellent. Thank you. And Kristen, thanks very, very much for putting all that stuff together and unbelievably quickly.
No problem. I now that I know exactly where it's at and to expect the 1-pager coming up. Which time did you say it should be released? A week from now?
No, 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks. Okay, for that would be
Yeah,
the
we're gonna have
final
everything
1-pager.
cleaned up. We're gonna have all the comments incorporated, and then we'll be ready at that point, with any luck, 2 weeks from tomorrow, to have 1-pager ready to come off the press or the digital press.
Okay, great. Yeah, now I'll email you for some other information and updates. I can keep this elevated on the Facebook page, continually, each week.
Okay, can you copy Pam on anything that you send me, please?
Yes.
Were there
Is
any
there an
addition-
email list for this group that has everybody's email address on it?
Yeah, Pam, can you send that to Tony?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
And also, I hadn't been getting any, like the invitation for tonight. Sharon was able to put it together for me, but I otherwise didn't know about it.
Okay, well, you can be put on the mailing list for anything. So
Okay,
Pam, if you can include Tony on that list as well, so he
Sure.
gets notified. I mean,
Sure.
it's up on the website, but you know, an email is much more appropriate for people who
Yeah.
don't look endlessly at the website.
You can sign up for notifications too when we post things on the website. They'll notify you through email for the agendas and
yeah, I get most of the
Mhm.
other ones for the town, but not this one. Thank you.
Okay, it's getting late. Pam, do you want to give us an update on where things stand with staff interviews, any feedback, additional input, et cetera, please?
Sure. Olivia and I finished the staff interviews. We met with everyone except the police department. We weren't able to get anything scheduled with them, but we met with fire, conservation, council on aging, in addition to the 3 other departments that were previously distributed for your review. And we summarized the interview results in a 1-page summary, and some of the goals were amended it with notations by Olivia in the Google Drive on the implementation chapters.
But that's not what you sent out yesterday, right? Because what I saw was just a repeat of the first 3 without saying you were going to be talking.
No, there
about
should have
them
been,
later.
I just consolidated them into one document, so all the departments should have
Okay,
been
I'll
on
look
that
at
page.
it. I did not see it that way, but that's
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
I only had the first
because
three.
I specifically looked at it and saw nothing else there.
There's just a couple of things on this document. It said that the town needs a chief procurement officer. We
No,
have
that was in the last one. There should have included the,
Yeah, but
if I
Did
didn't
we
send the
take-
right
I
document,
think that's what you attached the other
Okay.
Did
day.
you take
I-
that out?
I apologize for that. What's that?
Pam, did you take out the thing that said we need a chief procurement? Because we have one.
No, I didn't take anything out. I just,
You
those
should
were
take that
just the
out
su-
because Don is the chief procurement officer.
those were just a summary of our notes.
Yeah, well, Don is the chief and he has been for 15 years. So we shouldn't put something in that's not true.
Well,
And
tho-
also,
Those aren't things in the plan. Those are just relaying the interview results.
yeah,
to
no, I
the
know,
committee.
but
Okay.
that's something that's in error. And the other thing is about the radios. It's absolutely true. The police and the DPW do not have radios, but they do have their own town phones. So it sounds like DPW and police can't talk to each other. But
That's
that's not
correct.
true, because they can call each other on their phones. It's not terribly effective, but you know.
Well, I think that the point was he's not getting the emergency call. So if there's a tree down in a roadway or something, he's not getting the calls
Mhm.
through the radio. That would pertain
No, it
to
doesn't go through,
DPW.
yeah, and that's the problem. It doesn't go
Yeah,
through
right.
radio.
That-
But there
that
are
was-
they talk to each other on phones.
Well, that was
Okay.
his intention of, he
Well-
would like that to be resolved.
Will you resend the,
Yeah,
Document
I'll
then.
resend that. We can revisit it at the next meeting.
and
And how are you
But I
gonna
guess-
include these interviews in the master plan? I was just curious how you're gonna use it.
Based on our conversations, we've reviewed the goals with these individuals, and they provided feedback, and we've made the recommended edits and
but
Yeah.
I agree with Penny's point, though, that if there are errors in it, then there
So
should be, if nothing else, be a rebuttal.
I don't, this was just like verbatim feedback that we received.
No, I understand, but if we're gonna use it, if we're
We're
gonna publish
not-
it, we
we're
don't
not-
wanna we don't
We
want to
didn't-
publish something.
You're not
It
even
has
gonna
errors in
include it in the master plan.
No, it was more to inform the goals and get their feedback.
No, I think we should take a look at them because there was some valuable feedback with specific things that haven't been mentioned, just particularly with the Council on Aging. So I
Right.
think we should take a look at that and develop,
Yeah,
some-
and I had a
see
number
what's
as
worthy
well.
to incorporate into the goals section from the comments.
Okay, that sounds good.
How do you want to handle comments on what you send out? How should we handle
Oh,
that?
I apologize if
group.
I sent the wrong one. I will post it
No,
to the
that's
Google
okay, but
Drive
I'm
and
just-
email it
I'm
again,
asking,
and then,
yeah, but I'm asking the whole group as to how
Oh.
we should. I mean, if either we see something that's an error or we see something that ought to be expanded on or whatever it is, then how should we handle those comments? I marked up the first three quite a bit because I found a number of typographical and other kind of errors that confused the issue in the Parks and Rec one. And I disagreed with some of what the other people said. And I don't know whether the agreement or disagreement makes any difference and how we would want to deal with it.
Okay, again, I think if it gets put up on the website in the current version, and we get comments on it, I think any comments need to be comments of fact. And if we disagree with it, we need to get back to the people who provided the input in the first place and investigate whether that's really what they meant and test that against what we think we understand. But that's, I guess the two things that have become apparent to me is, first of all, the raw input that was put out is not something that's going to be an addenda to the master plan.
no.
It will be incorporated as is appropriate into the various goals and implementation matrix. But before that happens, we need to have a look and make sure that, not that we agree with sentiment, but that
The facts. are clear.
we agree with the facts. And if we have something that differs from those facts, we need to have that conversation in a comment in the document that you put on the web, on the drive rather. So the way we need to move forward on this is, Pam, if you can put up the latest and greatest on the web, send out an email, let us all know that it's there. We go in and make comments on it. And the comments can be, perspective. I'd like to minimize that if we can, or things that are contradictory to other things that we've heard. Then we need to make that clear. One other thing I think we've got to be very careful about is that we don't incite fraternal battles within town staff because people have differing positions on the same issue. Those need to be resolved before they go anywhere.
And can I add to that, Bob? I think it's some of these goals, to your point, it are, or not goals, opinions or needs or wants or whatever the takeaways are here. If nothing else, it's going to inform us that there's a conflict or that there's two sides or more to this
Right.
argument, so that as we're going forward to write this, existing conditions and where, our condensed versions of what's happening in Bolton around some of these issues and town departments, that we can say, this department is challenged with X, whatever that is, because we all, we see it 5 different ways, and that at least that informs the master plan that this is a place where we're going to need time to implement.
Right. And we need to have a reasonably community, pardon the expression, perspective on what that goal ought to be.
Right.
And not pit one perspective against another in the plan.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Let's see. You talked about the draft chapter review.
And
Pam,
where do we find those chapters?
Yeah,
could
they
not.
weren't ready yet. I thought,
Okay.
they would be
Okay.
ready for this meeting, but
Okay.
they're not
Okay,
ready
so
for
could you-
distribution. I think Olivia said next week.
Okay, so
Yeah, I'll
that's,
send out the updated existing conditions for you guys. Not too much has changed, but like I said, while we're developing some of the chapters, it's just trying to decide, what information should be included in which document, so that it's relatively seamless. So yeah, hopefully we can put
okay,
that on
so
the
when
web.
those are ready for Off-Broadway, can you send out an email, Pam, and post those as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we've discussed, at least to the extent of the next 2 to 3 weeks, what we're gonna do in terms of outreach, which is basically getting the last climate change one pager on the street. And that'll go out in the normal way. Cindy's very cooperative and collaborative about that. I was very happy and impressed that she was willing to print the whole thing. She did. And then that, of course, will be up in the appropriate location on the left-hand side of the Master Plan Steering Committee page under one pagers. And Kristen will provide a link to that yet again. Okay. Okay, anything else? This has been very useful.
Indeed.
Sorry about some changes in approach with respect to climate change, but I think it was a good conversation.
Stasha has her hand up.
Yes.
I do. I just didn't want to interrupt because I feel like I've been jumping in a lot. I just want to, are we going to get a second look at the draft goals for the climate change?
Yes.
Okay.
And
good.
Yeah,
Pam
Olivia's gonna
will,
crank that out next week.
right, exactly.
Thank you. I might have missed that.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, our next meeting, let's talk about that. Theoretically, we're gonna have everything we need 2 weeks from tomorrow. And then how about what's the Thursday after that? I don't have my calendar in front of me. Can somebody bring that?
28th.
28,
Okay, does that work for everybody?
sure.
Okay, so we'll have,
Instead, so the next meeting is the 28th?
that's correct.
I may be late because I have another meeting, but
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so at that point, we'll have hopefully a revision of the existing conditions that you'll have been working on, Olivia. And then we'll have an update on the at least the climate elements of the goals and actions. And then hopefully we'll have something that we can review and within a day kick out in terms of the one pager for climate action. Because I'd like everybody to review that and make sure that we're all aligned with the approach and the substance.
I have lost track of who's doing what on that. So am I in this process at some point? I just totally lost track of how we're getting from what we have now to the revised climate change.
Okay, so I'm not dictating this. Olivia, can you repeat what I just said? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna review the comments on the climate section goals that we just reviewed, and finalize those. And then I'm gonna just send you guys a new draft document of all of the goals that's a little more cleaned up and neat. And then develop some climate information that you can use in the one pager. Look at some of the state's sustainability and the emissions goals documents, and send you the existing conditions draft for next week.
Okay, so you're responsible for this draft.
Yes.
Got it.
And then we review.
Got it. The review. Yep.
Okay, and over and above that, the one pager, that's gonna be finished 2 weeks from tomorrow, right? And be available for review in our next meeting on the 28th. And then Pam is gonna send out the revised information out of the interviews with the town departments. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Or
Bob,
acceptable?
Thank you.
I had to jump to grab my phone. What was the date we decided on for our next meeting?
The 28th.
28.
Thank you.
Okay, well, unless anybody would like to add some new agenda items, I would
Would you like
Like
a
a
motion to
motion.
adjourn?
thank you. And a second,
Second.
and all in favor of adjournment,
Aye.
say aye.
Bye.
And if anybody opposed, don't say anything. Thank you.
And blessings of Ramadan to you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a nice
Pam.
evening, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Olivia.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's been
Thank you.
good.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Pam. Thank you, Olivia.
Thanks.
Okay, stop the video.